So we've kept the network in place until the end of March, so it gives a lot of seats for people to try and get home in the next couple of weeks. And we're currently talking to the Department of Foreign Affairs to get an understanding of how many Australians in each continent, in each location, want to get home. And we're working with them on putting on extra flights post the 26th, 27th of March, if the demand is there for them. And that dialogue is going on as we speak.
How many Australians do want to get home? Have they given you an indication yet? Is it around 1 million or far less than that?
So we're not hearing any numbers like that, and you know we certainly have the aircraft here. We have the crew. We can still put on a lot of services as needed, and we're also talking to the government about things like important freight markets. Some of the aircraft may be even flown empty. We're carrying freight back into Australia. So all that dialogue's going on with the government. As you can imagine, from our side, with the restrictions on travel out of the country and restrictions on travel into the country, there isn't the commercial demand to keep the operations going at the end of March. The only demand will be from expats wanting to come back to Australia, and the best people to tell us about that is the Department of Foreign Affairs, and that's where the dialogue is continuing.
Those post flights that you just referred to, Alan, after the bans are in place internationally, and those emergency flights that might take place afterwards, I'm assuming that that is a bill that would have to be paid by those who need the flight, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, what we're trying to work out is with DFAT is where the demand is, can it make sense for these flights to put on, and people would have to find their own way back by paying their own fares. I think that's what the Australian government would expect, and I think it's what the Australian public would expect.
Would your international flights remain cancelled in what you announced yesterday, as long as the government has obviously this ban in place for foreigners, or might that extend to however long they keep the 14-day quarantine period in place?
Well, obviously what we announced yesterday was dramatic and drastic, and was probably the worst day and worst decision I had to make as a CEO to ground that much of our aircraft. Simply the demand wasn't there. The restrictions contribute to that, but people aren't flying. While people can fly around Australia, we've seen a 60% drop in our capacity here in the domestic market. So we unfortunately had to stand down 2/3 of our workforce. We are giving them leave, we're allowing them to use the leave, and hopefully we'll have the flexibility of getting those aircraft back in the air when that demand recovers. It will probably recover domestically first as people are comfortable travelling around the country, and then as the bans are lifted, and there's a lot of different international bans, different countries have different restrictions now, and I think it'll take some time for them to come off. So we're planning that this could take 6 months, 12 months. We have to plan for the long haul. We have to plan that we have enough a runway to survive this and come out with getting all of the employees and all the aircraft back into the air.
Alan, there has been some talk in the papers this morning that for companies such as your main competitor Virgin Australia, they may well need to be nationalised. It may well be the only way for them to survive. Is that a viable option based on your experience? And is this a time when you're actually pulling for your competitors?
So I think one of the things that the government has to do is it can't pick winners and losers. The government has to be fair to every company and every market in the country. So whatever aid is given to one particular company, that has to be given to everybody in that sector. And Qantas needs to be treated equally, is our message to the government. The government has a lot of demands on its money. This is a lot worse than the GFC. This is going to be quite a large recession in this country and overseas. And the government has to be careful where it spends it and what it actually does. And a lot of people are going to need help. I know the government is talking about a social wage to help people that are stood down, to help people in the community, to give them a wage to get through this. The government can't do everything, and it has to allow the healthy companies like Qantas to look after itself, get through to the other side, and then help the country get back on its feet. It can't pick winners and losers, and it has to be equal to every company in any sector.
So you wouldn't look too kindly on the government nationalising Virgin then?
I think, well, that would be completely unfair to our sector of the economy. It would mean that we were competing against the Australian government, and Qantas couldn't do that. That would be a completely unbalanced competitive environment. It has to be equal for all parts of the aviation sector, and has to treat the aviation sector the exact same. I think that would be unfair otherwise.
You assured the government earlier this week that Qantas does have cash reserves. For how long do you have those cash reserves? How long do you expect them to last before you might need a bigger bailout?
Well, we're absolutely making sure that we can survive. The government is talking about this lasting at least 6 months. We're one of the strongest airlines on the globe coming into this. We've been making significant profits for the last 5 or 6 years. We've built up a good reserve of cash. We've built up a large number of aircraft, $4.9 billion worth, that we can secure financing on. So we've got plenty of bandwidth to last a very, very long time. And that's why when good companies have managed their position very well, the government should let them manage their way through this and not look after the badly managed companies that have been badly managed for 10 years, that have resulted in them being very weak. Picking winners and losers like that is not what the government is about. It shouldn't be what the Australian government is about. It shouldn't be what this economy is about.
Alan, the TWU's had quite a pop at you. What's your reaction to their comments?
Well, I think the TWU is inconsistent in their approach on this. You know, they haven't taken the time to even come in, Michael Caine, to talk to our people when they were given a briefing about this. TWU have been criticising companies that are standing people down and not giving them leave. They're criticising us for standing people down and giving them leave. The TWU took industrial action a while ago that cost millions of dollars. We went around them directly to our employees. They're no longer listening to TWU. I don't think the TWU are relevant to us. I'd rather not discuss them, because I think we have other bigger issues to sort out, and I think the TWU, as far as I'm concerned, are irrelevant and inconsistent in how they're approaching us.
You've had support come from across the aisle at Woolworths, Rio, Coles. You could transfer some of your staff to jobs in those other sectors and other companies. But do you need to level with your staff here? At what point will you need to sack people?
So the reason why we're doing this is we have no doubt that when this is all over and the coronavirus comes to an end, there will be a need for airline demand. The economy will have to rebuild. People will want to travel. Businesses, small businesses, large businesses, people want to visit family and friends. There will be, typically after SARS, there was a surge in demand. So we want to get all of those 160 aircraft back in the air. We want to put all these people back to work. We are being honest with our people. We're telling them we don't know how long this is going to last. It could be 6 months, it could be 9 months, it could be longer. We have to make sure we make Qantas capable and viable to respond to that demand when it comes back. We have to protect their jobs. We are protecting their jobs. We don't want to make them redundant. Other companies are making people redundant. We want our people back. We want them flying aircraft, and we are absolutely sure that that will happen. This will be over and that demand will come back.